Our Revolutionary War Patriots, we owe them a great deal. Their sacrifice is the reason why we have a United States of America at all. It's important that we remember them and honor them. Here at Family Tree Nuts, we teamed up with the SAR and the DAR here in Lexington, Kentucky to celebrate and honor 28 Patriots here in Lexington Cemetery. We are going to visit each grave, and they're going to tell a little bit about each Patriot, place an American flag, and also, if their spouse is next to them, they are going to be presented with a carnation flower. We're really looking forward to this ceremony of being able to honor these Patriots. And by the way, if you like these types of videos, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and click that little bell so you get a notification as to when we post new videos. Now let's head on to the ceremony.
My name is Patrick Wesolosky, and I am the President-elect of the Lafayette Chapter, and I want to thank you all for coming today, because in some way I sent out an email to either your chapter regent or your president or somebody, and they passed it on to you, and you took time out of your day today to come out and walk with us. So I'm going to jump back a little bit. In 2020, we were dealing with that horrible thing, COVID, and guys in the SAR, we needed something to do. We needed something that could fulfill our time, and we decided that we were going to start looking for Revolutionary War Patriots, not just soldiers. We were looking for the people that fought the war, paid taxes, took an oath of allegiance and gave the middle finger to King George, people that gave supplies, that were worked the carts, any of those types of things. And we compared them, and we started and we found 8. And then 8 became 10. And then 10 became 15 and 18. So by July 4th, we were able to walk around, and we had about 40 people walk around on July 4th. And then we had a Veterans Day thing out here, and we went out and made sure that we took care of the veterans, the true soldiers. And fast forward, here we are today. We are up to 28 Patriots that are buried in this amazing, beautiful cemetery. But not only 28 Patriots, we have one President General of the SAR, so he was the Grand Poobah back in 1900. And then we also are lucky enough just over that way, and we will stop by her grave, Mary Desha, one of the founders of the DAR, and we'll go and we'll also lay flowers at her grave and pay tribute to what she did for making sure that we both have two amazing organizations. So the way today is going to kind of work is we're just going to stroll. Patriot so-and-so, thank you for your service, and then just take a step back. The reason that we're doing that is we're saying their name again, because you're never forgotten until your name is not spoken again. So if we are able to sit there and say these Patriots' names, then they continue to live on. And this is obviously the weekend we need to do it. So does anybody know what was important on this day, July 1st? No, none of you did, because that's when I got engaged 14 years ago. So anyway, that's my plug for my wife right there. But tomorrow, July 2nd, should have been the most important day ever, because that's the day that they voted that we were going to be independent. But as we think about that as we walk around, and these men and these women, that they were a part of that. And then also we're going to recognize the wives, because who kept the family going? Who kept the farm going? Who followed the camps and washed the clothes and cut the patches and cooked and mended the socks? We're going to make sure that not only do we recognize the Patriot, but we recognize the Patriot's wives, the family, the support system. So what I'm going to need you guys to all do is play a big role in this. We need to take flowers, we need to take flags, and we need to go walk, and we need to make sure that we remember these people.
Shall we pray? May you find this day to be a true blessing, as you recall that we live in a free nation. We honor our ancestors who fought for our freedom and independence, a feat that was made possible with the guidance of our Lord. We also pray for all the soldiers who continue to fight for us to maintain peace and harmony in the nation. May God bless them all. Amen.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, so we are visiting our first Patriot, Colonel James Morrison. James Morrison, over his lifetime, besides being a Patriot, amassed a lot of money He did what most people that have lots of money should do, is he donated it to Transylvania University, and there's a building called Old Morrison. It is named after him. When he passed away, James was born in 1755 and died in 1823. He was moved here in 1854. He was an ensign in Pennsylvania. He died and buried in Washington, D.C., and then later his niece brought him here. This is where I would say, okay, who wants to do his wife? But if you want to do his wife, you have to run down the hill. So we're going to wait for the wife. We're going to get him, because this was, he was brought in, and his wife, I believe, was already buried here. Robert Barr. Up until last week, Robert Barr's headstone laid in this spot right here, but when I looked at the plot map, it actually said that he was buried here. So I reached out to Lexington Cemetery, and within 24 hours, his headstone was moved to where he was actually buried. Robert is someone that I don't have very much information on. Most speculation is he had something to do with Lexington to where Barr Street was named. I will read his facts. Robert Barr, born 1749, died 1821. His wife, Rebecca Tilton, is buried right here. He was in the Pennsylvania line, and he was a second lieutenant. Alicia Warfield. Alicia Warfield had two wives, Elizabeth Dorsey and Ruth Burgess. No one knows where Elizabeth is buried. He was born in 1741. He died in 1818. He's from Maryland, and he provided patriotic service. And the reason that these two patriots are so close is that Robert Barr's daughter married his son. The next, we have a pairing here. And when I told Russ that we were going to be doing 27 patriots, I lied, because we're doing 28, because last night I was able to prove that Robert Parker was a major during the Revolutionary War, and also supposedly the land that he owned is in Lexington, is now known as Parker Place. It's where the Italian-style house was built, but that's where supposedly the first brick building in Lexington was built, and it was his house. And Robert has the unique distinction of being one of the two patriots that are both the grandfathers of Mary Todd Lincoln. So obviously he's one, and then there's going to be some guy named Todd that's also one, and we'll be visiting theirs in a little bit. And then he has a son, James, that is also a patriot. So I will let you know about both of them here. James Parker was born in 1716 and died in 1797. He married his cousin, Mary Todd. He was from Pennsylvania. He was a lieutenant, and he was the father of John Parker and Robert Parker. Robert Parker, born 1760, died 1800. His wife was Elizabeth Rittenhouse Porter. He was a major from Pennsylvania. He supposedly owned the first brick house in Fayette County and is the grandfather of Mary Todd Lincoln. So Patriot 1, Patriot 2, and then Patriot 2's wife. And if I remember correctly, the Parkers were originally buried in the old burying ground, the Episcopal burying ground on 3rd Street, and later moved here. Also, these are the Parkers that I believe that Parker's Mill Road came from, because those were, if back in that area, you have Parker's Mill Road, Patriots, Bowman's Mill Road, Patriot, Ryman's Mill Road, Patriots. So that area, there were 3 Patriots living in that area, and their roads all at some point crossed each other. All right, we've moved on to the one of the larger monuments for a Patriot. It was put in by his son, and the Patriot is Dr. Richard Pindall, native of Maryland. Richard Pindall, born 1755, died 1833, married Eliza Hart, was a surgeon in the 1st Regiment of the Maryland Continental Line. He lived across the street from Henry Clay, who was his brother-in-law. His wife was Henry Clay's wife's sister. On the opposite corner, Richard Pindall's son is buried. He is a veteran of the War of 1812. If you notice, next to Richard Pindall, James Morrison Pindall. Have we heard the name James Morrison recently? So yes, this is his grandson, and his grandson was named after Patriot James Morrison. On the other side, there is a Henry C. Pindle named? Henry, who's a famous C in Kentucky? Clay? Clay, is that it? So yeah, so the other grandson was named after the neighbor and brother-in-law, Henry Clay. So a very, very interesting headstone here. Remember when we were up there and we said James Morrison's wife was not buried there? Well, because she's also related, she is behind our honor guard here on this corner, Esther. All right, so a couple years ago, I had no idea that Henry Hardesty was a Patriot, but when I was standing here and we were talking about this and the DAR was over there doing their thing with Mary Desha, I was standing here and I looked down on 1765, and that put him on the late end of being able to be in the Revolutionary War. Most people would be like, well, he would have only been 11, but you got to remember, Revolutionary War went to when? 1783 was when they figured out the treaty in Paris, so he had a number of years to be able to be a part of the thing. So let's read about Henry Hardesty, born in 1765, died in 1857. He is probably the only Patriot that was buried here originally, because by that time this was called the City of the Dead and it was open and graves were starting to be brought in, but he died after it was open, so he probably, I'm not for sure, but he probably was one of the first Patriots buried in here. His wife is Sally Dykes, or Sarah Dykes, either one depending on it. This says Sarah. He was a private from Maryland, and he was also a scout. All right, somebody just go ahead and start. It's raining, so everybody just take their turn. All right, everybody, so we all know the name Boone, we all know the name Bryan. In fact, if you don't, then why do you live in Kentucky? So Daniel Boone Bryan, nephew of Daniel Boone, used to live out at Waveland, out on the far side of town. At some point, they dug up the family cemetery, and as you can see, they were reinterred in the most awesome, probably, place that right as you come into the cemetery. So as a lot of these are, we have the big family monument, which mentioned the main people, and then we have the family stone, or the individual stones, right here. Daniel Bryan was born in 1758 and died in 1845. His wife was Elizabeth Turner. He fought for both Virginia and North Carolina as a private, and major claim to fame was that he had a famous uncle named Daniel Boone. Our next Patriot is John Buck here. John Buck was born in 1748 and died in 1815. His wife was Miriam Richardson. He was from the Virginia Continental Line. He was a lieutenant colonel. I have not been able to find anything else about him, but almost all our Patriots that we're doing today, except for like maybe one or two, are either a proven Patriot in the DAR or the SAR. If you notice, the one thing that makes this Patriot unique is that when he was married or reburied from the west side of town to the east side of town, it was late enough that they were actually able to apply to get a VA stone for him. So I think he is technically the only Patriot that has a true U.S. issued stone. If you notice the last name Masterson, yes, he is related to the people that had Masterson Station or the stockade or the fort out at Masterson Station Park. James Masterson, born 1752, died 1832. His wife is Margaret Wymore. Find a Grave says that she's buried here. I haven't been able to access the cemetery records, so I'm not sure where he's buried, but somebody posted that they don't think that she was moved. He was an ensign in the North Carolina line. All right, everybody, so this is going to be a nice little break for us. We have 4 Patriots buried here within a cornhole's throw. So this is the Todd family plot, and obviously we know that the Todds were important and that their granddaughter ended up marrying Abraham Lincoln. So we have General Levi Todd buried here. He is actually flanked by both his wives. Obviously, he had one thing in particular. He was attracted to women named Jane because he married two of them. And then we have General Robert Todd and his wife Anne. There was also a third Todd brother who unfortunately was with Levi out at the Battle of Blue Licks, and he did not survive that battle, much like Daniel Boone's son. And so he is buried at the mass grave up above the monument at Blue Licks. But these two gentlemen obviously went on to do very well in the city of Lexington. In fact, for those that are from Lexington, if you had ever shopped at Lexington Mall, you were shopping at Levi Todd's property. That's where his farm was before it was bought out, then eventually sold to the city. So that whole area going out Richmond Road, where the large church and the water is and everything, was the Todd property. So we have Levi, Robert, and then we have Jane, and for some reason someone named Ann. And if you want to hit the rewind button back even further, Helm Place was built by Abraham Bowman and his son. So the original Bowman cabin is farther down Bowman Mill Road, and Helm Place was the son that was built later in the 1800s that most likely Abraham probably didn't get to enjoy. So this is the grave of Clifton Rhodes. Most descendants spell it R-O-D-E-S. Most people that think they know what they're doing spell it R-H-O-D-E-S, but most of the records show R-O-D-E-S. He was married to Sarah Waller. He was born in 1740. He died in 1814. He provided supplies from the state of Virginia. This was a nice one to kind of clean a little bit. You can barely see his name. If you come out here with a mirror on a sunny day, you can hit from the side and everything lights up. But just to kind of see what's left of this unique work in the corner here. So when I started the project that we were going to start adding wives, I naturally assumed that his wife was there, and like most things in life, I was naturally wrong. That is his son. His wife is actually buried there, and she is buried with another family member. So when I researched it, I looked up this gentleman right here, Joseph Birch, who turns out to be a Patriot, and these people were related, and then the Rhodes married into the Todd family, so somewhere around here there is a Levi Todd Rhodes headstone. So once again, we're seeing how small Lexington was and how the families of the people that were important, the Patriots, were marrying and starting a family. It's also interesting that I only found this a week ago, and since I found it, somebody has actually come out and cleaned out all the dirt and the grass that was growing in between. So whatever person was that miracle worker, I greatly appreciate that. So we have Patriot 1, we have Patriot 2, we have Wife 1, and we have Wife 2. All right, this is Cornelius Sullivan. The only way that I originally was able to prove that he was a Patriot was somebody wrote on Find a Grave that he was a Patriot. And then when I got the burial record, down in the corner of the burial thing, it said Rev War. But that was all I had at the time during COVID. But once the Kentucky room in the Lexington Library was opened up, I was able to go in and pull up the microfilm, and sure enough, I was able to find his pension record. So he is truly a Patriot. He did some type of service for a high-ranking officer, and because of that, he was brought to Kentucky to start a new life, and he is buried. This plot is that officer's daughter and son-in-law's stuff, and so they made sure that he got a grave befitting a Patriot. So if we'd like to go ahead and give him a flag, I know nothing of him having a wife. I have no idea of his birth. He died in 1849, and that is all I know about him.
What rank was it?
I don't know.
Cornelius Sullivan, thank you for your service.
This is the monument for the Payne and Taylor family. This is one of those many monuments where you have multiple names of families and you have the Patriot and his wife on it. But upon further research, I was able to find out that this is the grave of Henry Payne, and this is his wife, Anne, right here. So at the time, the families would show that they had a little bit of money and put something up big, and then as they they were originally brought in and then people were buried in afterwards. So if we can have somebody put a flag for Henry and a flower for Anne. And not too far we have Major William Dunlap and his wife Rebecca. Again, we have the family markers. You can see which side we started to clean, and then we started to focus trying to get to the Dunlap side cleaned up. And then the family was reinterred in a spoke-like fashion, with William being in front of the name of the family, and then his wife right here. So somebody would like to place the flag for our Patriot and the flower for the wife. William Dunlap, born 1744, died 1816. Wife, Rebecca Robertson. He was a major from Virginia. So once again, a large Patriot family that was reinterred. Beautiful stone that we've been working on for a couple years. Not saying that we sneak out here on Saturdays and Sundays when there's nobody here from the cemetery, but that may happen somewhere to be able to deal with some of the heights and stuff. But at one time you weren't able to read any of these names at all, and we had to go buy a find-a-grave photo. But our Patriot is Charles Wycliffe and his wife Suzanne. And Charles Wycliffe was born 1763, died 1838. He was a private from Virginia, and probably my favorite Patriot because he owned at least 2 taverns, one on Short and Mill, and he also owned the Washington Hotel on Short and Broadway. So he was a well-known businessman. We're hoping over a period of time that we'll be able to get all these stones looking like almost like they're originals, but it's one of the ones that somebody says, well, why don't you just finish one and do the other? Well, if we were just to focus on one, it could take a year or so to get to it. And with 27 Patriots, I don't know if I would be around to get to the last one. So the goal is if we can work on them every so often and chip away at it, it makes a pretty big difference. All right, so we're at the grave of James Bullock and his wife, his second wife, Anne. As you can tell, they've been reinterred. The stones were really, really black. The cleaning is slowly starting them to get to more of a gray color. You can kind of see discolorations where some of the chemical reaction has been happening. Once the rain comes down, that'll wash away and it'll start looking a little nicer. So these were the original ones that were interned, and then the rest of the family the Bullock family was then buried in afterwards. James Bullock Sr., born 1735, died 1813. His first wife was Rebecca Wingfield. His second wife was Ann Waller. They were reinterred here in 1941. He was from Virginia. He rendered some type of aid or service to the cause. His wife, Ann Waller, is the sister of Sarah Waller Rhodes. So when we did Clifton Roads up there, once again, here we have families that have married in together, most likely knew each other in Virginia, and when they came to Kentucky, kind of, married that way. All right, everybody, this is James Bourne. The Bourne family cemetery, I believe, was in maybe Mount Sterling. I'm not quite sure. I read it a couple years ago, but I know that they were all brought in. Like most of the headstones we've seen today, very few mention the service of the Patriot. So when you look at this side over here, James, where it talks about him, there's nothing mentioned. It isn't until you come to this side and you see, I believe it's his grandson, it mentions that his father was a soldier of the Revolution, and then the grandson was a part of the orphan brigade for the, I believe that would have been the Civil War, and that would have been the, not the Union, the Confederacy. You know, me being the damn Yankee that I am, I have to think of those terms. So, but anyway, so it's nice to see that no matter what, the families, depending on what the wars were still involved military and believed that fighting and for what you stood for was important. In memory of William Russell, in Captain's absence, led company at Kings Mountain, Virginia, Kentucky War Service 1774 to 1749, Colonel of the 7th Infantry, USA Northwest frontier 1808 to 1815, so he's a War of 1812. And Price Russell, 1768 to 1830, buried on Mount Brilliant Farm, Russell Cave. His gravesite is lost on a 2,000 plus acre horse farm that is pretty much still the original 2,000 acres as it was back when the Russells moved there and got land for the family from the French and Indian War. There is actually a Patriot buried on the property, but it is not William Russell that you can go and visit the gravesite. But anyway, since we have a cenotaph, I thought it would be nice that since a family member took the time to remember him, that we should do the same. We have walked into one of the larger plots in the cemetery. This is the Breckenridge family. The Breckenridge family has been around since the Revolutionary War, a strong military and political family all the way up through the Civil War and beyond, both sides of the war between the states. But right now we're gonna focus initially on the people that have to do Patriot. So actually for this flag I would like one of the DAR to do it, because this is one of our female Patriots. Letice or Latrice, depending on which record you read, Preston Breckenridge. So she supplied, I believe, supplies and horses to the cause while they were in Virginia. We have her son, John Breckenridge, and his wife, Mary. They're both buried in this plot right here. There is, I believe, this is one of the few that the SAR has a marker out. So John Breckenridge was born in 1760, passed away in 1808. Obviously, we know his wife is Mary Hopkins Cabell. The Cabell name will be in many of the family going down. The famous general has that middle name. His mother, depending on its Letice or Letitia, Breckenridge, born 1728, died 1798, so just barely after we had become a state. Her husband, Robert Breckenridge, I believe is buried back in Virginia. We have civil service for the son and supplying supplies for the mother. We're going to stick with the family, and we have one unique thing in Lexington Cemetery, is that we have another Breckenridge that we're going to honor up here. So this is Joseph Cable Breckenridge, Major General of the United States Army from 1842 to 1920. Basically, so towards the end of the Civil War on up. The thing that makes this unique is he is one of the past President Generals of the SAR, which means from 1900 he was the top guy in the SAR based out of Kentucky and Washington, D.C. So I think it's only right, because not only is he a veteran, but because he was the head of the SAR, that we go ahead and recognize him today. All right, so this is Soyel, or as I've seen it written, Sowell Woolfolk, and his wife Mary. He died in 1830, 86 years old. Born in 1744, died in 1830, was from Virginia. He gave supplies to the Army, and his son married the daughter of Abraham Bowman. So once again, we've got a tie back to the Bowman family. We actually started cleaning these graves. Somebody came in behind us because we only cleaned the area where the names were and the death date, and then the family came in and obviously cleaned those and the ones behind us. If you're playing along at home, or if this were a test, hopefully everybody took notes and they remember that in the first 8, there were 2 people that we did that had the last name Parker. This is the third. This is the other son. This is John and Isabella Todd. Isabella, I believe, was his cousin. The Parkers and the Todds married quite a bit. He was from Pennsylvania. Robert Parker, born 1760, died 1800. Married Elizabeth Rittenhouse. Oh, Porter. This has Isabella, so I might have. Oh wait, no, James. I'm sorry. James Parker, born 1760, died 1797. Married Mary Todd. Was a lieutenant from Pennsylvania. Father of John Parker, or his father is John Parker. This is the family stone right here, John Parker Sr. and Isabella. You can see that we cleaned it, and then a year later we actually were able to read these and find these to be the actual individual stones. This is Elizabeth Clay Watkins, the mother of Henry Clay. Obviously somebody thought Henry was way more important than Mom based upon the size of their monuments. So Elizabeth was born in 1750, died 1829. Her first husband, John Clay, is buried, I believe, in Virginia, and I'm not sure the whereabouts. I Googled and I could not find where Henry Watkins is buried. She was from Virginia and provided supplies. Besides being Henry Clay's mother, she was also the mother to 15 other children, and then remarried Henry Watkins in a tavern, and they ran a tavern in Versailles. The interesting thing about the Clay tie to this is that in 1725, the Marquis de Lafayette, as he was finishing up the tour of the United States, he came through Kentucky, and as he came from Louisville, made his way through Frankfort, and started his way down towards Lexington. He stopped in Versailles, and he stopped at Watkins Tavern and gave a speech from the second floor of the tavern and visited with Henry Clay's mother. He came to Lexington. The roads were bad. He was supposed to stay out in Jessamine County and actually out, I think, at Abraham Bowman's place, but the roads were so bad because of the weather he wasn't able to. So he stayed at Keene Place, which is the house on Keeneland, and he visited multiple places, though, over the next day and a half. He visited a Masonic temple, Lodge Number 1, I believe. He visited Transylvania University, a girls' school, and then he visited Henry Clay's estate. Henry Clay was in Washington, D.C. at the time, but he made sure that he paid his respects to his wife. So for the Marquis de Lafayette, who's on this major tour of the United States, and that tour is about him, people are giving him 1,000-pound wheels of cheese and making him mayor and all these things. He took time out to visit two Clays because he realized how important the Clay family was in Kentucky, but also in Washington, D.C. If you ever do visit Henry Clay's estate, one of the interesting things about it is Henry Clay was a Mason. So was George Washington. So was Henry Clay. So was Lafayette. The three of them were Masons. And hanging on the wall in the frame is a Masonic apron that they wear in their services that was given from Henry Clay to Marquis de Lafayette when they were laying a cornerstone. I think, not sure if it was Bunker Hill or the Washington Monument. That was what they wore at that ceremony, and it hangs there today, so it shows the strong tie between those gentlemen and the Masonic Lodge. Saving one of the very best for last, Abraham Bowman. This is his stone right around here. I tried to get the map in time for our walk, but I wasn't able to. I think that may be his stone right there, and his wife's next to us. But since I'm not quite sure of that, there's a DAR marker over here. We will go ahead and put the flags and the flowers over here. Colonel Abraham Bowman was the commander of the 8th Virginia, obviously Bowman's Mill Road. And as we heard earlier, his daughter married the son of Patriot Sowell Woolfolk.
Seth Stephens. So,
present firelocks.
we found out about Seth because Patrick and I were trying to find out where he was buried at originally, which is out off Spur Road. And we went out there and found where the cemetery was. It was pretty apparent it had been dug up and removed, and we got very upset for a little while. And finally figured out that we got in touch with his descendant, who had found out that a developer was out there and was going to develop a property, and he had contacted her and originally wanted her to pay to either have them left there and her pay for the care in perpetuity, or she could pay to have them moved. And she got an attorney and fought him, and eventually he paid to have them reinterred here. He paid for the headstones, he paid for her attorney's fees. So because of a very strong-willed woman who was not going to give up and knew what was right, Seth and his 3 family members are now buried here. The one, they did not know who it was, but they found the grave shaft out there. When you get, apparently, if you dig down about a foot and skim the topsoil off, the grave shafts become very apparent. So this is why Seth is here, and he was reinterred here about 2 years ago. So, Seth, thank you for your service.
Shoulder firelocks. About face. Forward. Dismissed.
Wow. Was that powerful or what? we were able to visit the graves of 28 Patriots here in Lexington, Kentucky. When we were walking in between graves, one of the things that I thought that made the most sense, something that I'd never heard before, is one of the folks that was with us from the SAR said, you know, you can say that you're patriotic. You can say that you honor and respect the sacrifices that those patriots did. But when you come out here and actually put your respect and your honor into action, it's even more moving. One person had likened it to maybe even attending church. It's a little different to say that you're a religious person, but going to church puts it on a different level. And that's what we did today. We came out here and honored these patriots, said their name, and now they're not forgotten. We are proud to be part of this ceremony today. God bless these American Revolutionary War patriots, and God bless America. And remember, family tree nuts, let our nuts find the nuts in your family tree.